You're still watching The Pulse with me, Gifty, and up here. It's World Environment Day, and we cross to Germany, where youth climate activists stormed the German parliament to protest what they call the government lack of action on climate change. Well, the government has its own issues to deal with because its government coalition between Angela Merkel's Conservatives and the Social Democrat Party hit another bump in an already bumpy road. One party's leader has resigned, while the other is struggling to say the right things. The big question is, can Angela Merkel hold on to power and to deal with these climate change issues? And how can Europe's largest economy lead on the world stage when its government can't seem to get along? First, though, let's talk about the environment. For more on all of these, we're across to Germany, where William Glucroft is correspondent with our partner DW, is standing by for us. William, it's good to have you over here. Like I said, it's a holiday, but let's get talking about the issues. Tell us more about the action of these youth activists in the German Bundestag and to what extent their actions are justified.
Well, and Eid Mubarak to all your viewers. Yeah, yesterday was quite a day in the Bundestag, the German parliament. There wasn't an actual session going on with members of parliament, but there was an event going on with the president of the parliament, Wolfgang Schäuble, one of the most respected parliamentarians in the German government. He was leading a session of active political people across the political spectrum. And during this session with these young people, a group of them representing the Fridays for Future climate protest stormed to the front in front of the president of the Bundestag and unfurled a banner that said, "Your climate policy equals catastrophe." Many others laid down on the floor pretending that they were dead to protest climate change, to protest what they've been saying for months now, every week, striking from school, that the lack of action on climate change, the lack of political action on climate change is killing them, is killing their futures. So not during an actual session of parliament, not with actual members of parliament sitting there, but still a very strong statement, especially in front of the most senior, the most respected politician in German politics right now. It made its rounds in German media, on social media, and it certainly has got people thinking about just how big climate change has become as an issue here in German politics and at the European Union level.
I think that's a needed aggressive move, to deal with climate change, and I hope that the youth here in Ghana will take a cue from that as well. But what else has been done in Germany as far as World Environment Day is concerned?
There's a lot of events going on around this day. I mean, just over the weekend, we had the annual major bike protest through Berlin, when a lot of the streets and even the highway that goes around the city is shut down, and thousands of cyclists participate to protest for better bike infrastructure, less reliance on private automobiles. So we've seen that. The United Nations, the German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas, he was at a conference on climate security. He led that. Germany currently has a 2-year rotating seat on the Security Council of the United Nations, and they're making climate change a really big issue for their 2-year period at the Security Council. And they're making the issue of security, of global security, national security, and climate change. In fact, the foreign minister for Ghana was there. She said, you better watch out. The more climate change becomes a reality, the harder it is for people in Ghana, for example, to farm. Farming is very important in Ghana. The harder it is going to be for people to make a living. They're going to move to the cities, and when they can't find jobs in the cities, they might go elsewhere. So the kind of migration movements that we saw in 2015 and 16 to Europe that really caused a lot of instability in Europe from people from around Africa and the Middle East coming to Europe, she says that's nothing in comparison to what we might see the worst climate change get. So these are things that the entire world needs to get on board to prevent major security crises and major political crises, all descending from climate change, from wicked weather, from crazy extremes of desertification, of lack of water supplies, people fighting over water, these kinds of things. So these are the sorts of events that we're seeing. The German government is talking about a climate cabinet, where the cabinet, Angela Merkel's cabinet, is going to meet to discuss climate issues. Angela Merkel met at a major business conference of German manufacturers yesterday. There was a heated debate about the role of business there. Of course, Germany is a major industrial power, has a huge carbon footprint, a carbon impact on that. Big debates going on in Germany about what the role the German government now plays to implement climate-friendly policies, when big, heavy industry is the linchpin to German economic might.
That's a very delicate balance to strike, but we need to, because it is necessary to save the environment. And it's interesting that the Ghana Foreign Affairs Minister was there. We see how we bring that debate back home, because it's not as big here, I must say. But well, away from World Environment Day, and we hope and pray that we'll do the right things to keep the environment safe. But let's get onto the government of Angela Merkel and its issues that it's dealing with. We know that Angela Merkel is a well-known and popular leader, not just in Germany, but abroad as well. Why then is her leadership in danger?
Yeah, there is a direct connection between this focus on climate change and the challenges and struggles of the German government right now. That's the two parties, the two establishment parties in Germany, Angela Merkel's Conservatives and the Social Democrats, neither of which is seen as particularly credible on climate change. Angela Merkel, remember, years ago when she first came into power, was seen as the climate chancellor, that she was going to bring in a lot of reforms that Germany needed to become climate friendly and become a leader in addressing climate change. And that's really fallen by the wayside under her rule. These climate goals that Germany had set for itself for 2020, those are mostly not going to be met. They've been pushed back to 2030. A lot of question if those can be met. Germany still relies a lot on coal, which is not set to be phased out until 2038. So this is all being seen as a credibility issue for the German government, that on one hand says climate change is important, but on the other hand doesn't see a lot of tangible action being taken. And they're suffering from that in polls and in elections, both in the German level and at the EU level. Angela Merkel, as you mentioned, is still very popular, still well-liked, but the party that she represents is going down in the polls, and her junior coalition partner, the Social Democrats, is faring even worse. Its leader resigned this week because of the dismal performance that her party did in the European elections. This is really causing a credibility gap, and the less credibility the parties have, the harder it is for these two parties to stay together, to stay stable, to pass laws, to set policy, to govern Germany, and to be a fair and equitable partner at the European level on the world stage.
Well, I believe that they'll pull through. They've had all these issues from the onset, and so hopefully they'll pull through. But finally, William, what implications does Germany's political situation have beyond the German borders?
Well, Germany being the leader at the EU level, it needs a stable government to be able to speak with one voice. I mentioned this business conference with major companies, German companies. They criticize Angela Merkel for having an inconsistent, unstable government, which is making it very hard to set economic policy. It's making it very hard for businesses, both German businesses doing business outside of Germany, around the world, and other companies wanting to do business in Germany, making it very hard to set policies, make business decisions, see where to go forward, how to grow their businesses, has major impacts on the global economy when the German government doesn't have its act together to set consistent policy and speak with one voice. At the same time, we've seen for months France's President Emmanuel Macron wanting to make some big changes with the EU, some big reforms, has some major ideas for it. The German government has not really been able to play ball, even just to negotiate on what those changes might be. So we have a lot of issues when the German government is distracted with internal issues that it can't look outwards, as the EU is really in need of strong leadership, especially as Brexit looms, when we really don't know what that might do to the EU, and not only internally but also its footing on the world stage.
It doesn't get any easier, does it? William, thank you very much for that update. William Glucroft is correspondent with our partners, DW. He joins us all the way from Berlin here on the show. And of course, he talks about the World Environment Day celebration there, or commemoration there, as well as the major issues that the government of Germany is having. This is still The Pulse. To stay